Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour, and today is Thursday, April 3rd, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeannie Rice on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Rice's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet, and it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 20 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again absolutely free. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one where people have been stepped through that worksheet process. And if you choose to listen to those even repeatedly, it can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also go to your App Store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And if you choose to do that, before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on that, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. We hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their life, and secondarily because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, we would greatly appreciate you doing so. One way to do that is to email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org. Another way is you can email Jeannie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. If you're listening to us on the internet at live.needle.com/mindshiftersradio, we're greatly appreciative of your being here. Glad you're choosing to spend time with us. And from that perspective, you can't comment or give us a voice call. However, if you go to your App Store and search for Needle, N-E-D-L, it's an AI tuner for live radio. If you download that, open it, log in, answer a few questions, it gives you the option to type a comment or talk to us voice to voice. And we greatly appreciate whenever anybody chooses to email us or contact us through the app, as it makes it infinitely easier for us to live into our intention with this work. The intention with this work is that we be of service, and that's just so much easier to do when we know how these things are landing for you. So we have plenty of time for comments and questions as we start our time together today. And I'm open for comments and questions about how things are landing for you. Yesterday, I began reading from the book about the cause of emotions and the secret life of the brain. And that was prompted because on Monday's show, some people were getting quite triggered to upset, and their mind was telling them that they're upset about what somebody else on the internet show was saying, or about world events, across the globe from where they are. And what we understand with this work is that I'm always actively creating any response, any reaction, any emotion that I experience. And whenever I'm experiencing something that's less than loving, that's not so pleasant, it is a boon to my life experience to be able to identify the process I'm using to create that experience and then give me access to the tools that I would need to use to change that creative process and make it something that's more loving, more safe, sane, and livable, more comfortable, more compassionate. And as I was doing a summary of our set of tools related to that on Tuesday, I thought, let's take it to the next level and read from the book How Emotions Are Made: The Secret Life of the Brain by Lisa Feldman Barrett, Barrett. And so I'm curious about how this is landing for people. I've taken a diversion from the experience of reading from the book A Walk in the Physical by Christian Sundberg in response to people's interactions on the internet show on Monday. And we have this happen on a regular basis in the support group, as you might imagine. On a regular basis in the support group, people are doing real deep work on issues in their lives and their interpretation of those issues and a response to those issues that they find unpleasant, difficult, painful, etc. And sometimes it's big stuff for people, right? It's whether it's family dynamics or it's sexual abuse or it's drug and alcohol abuse or it's the politics of the current climate that we're in, or it's somebody attacking a group of people that they have somehow identified as being different than them. They've taken on the action of trying to make the other person seem as they are other or different. Some people turn that word other into a verb, and they say, we have othered people when we think they are less than or more than us. And whenever that happens and people are doing their work and somebody else gets triggered to upset, it's really important for us to come back to the basics and understand, look, everything about what we teach and observe for ourselves and the tools we apply only work because the fact of the matter is I'm creating my experience of life right here inside my own mind-body energy system. We had a fairly powerful example the other day in one of our support groups, and a woman said she had the experience of sitting in a town, a small town, where some kind of building was in disrepair. It was falling down, or it was, she called it an eyesore, and she talked about how it was so upsetting to her. And I did what we usually do in the support groups, and I interrupted and I said, let me just help you clarify your speech there, because the outside event is not what's upsetting. And she pushed back quite a bit. No, this is just ugly. No, this is upsetting. No, this is, and I kept trying to help her understand that that's what it meant to her. And then she got defensive and said, oh, do you mean to tell me that you could see something like that and not think it's ugly or not get upset? And I chuckled because recently in my own hometown here, just within a half a mile of my house, there was a long-standing, 30-plus years, floral garden, flower shop, greenhouse facility, right? And you might call it a nursery, you might call it, a combo, flower shop, nursery, greenhouse, whatever. And 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, it went out of business. So it's been sitting there defunct. And, I think it was in the middle of last week, the fire department had arranged to use it for a training ground. And they burned it to the ground and had all kinds of fire trucks around and black smoke billowing. And then days after that, as I would drive by, now there's even less of it standing. There's some metal structure still standing, and there was a, Caterpillar tractor trying to tear it down, and there were some stone or cinder block walls that were still, partially up but crumbling. And I was able to report to this other person in my support group that as I drove by, I would drive by it twice a day to get to and from work. The only thing I experienced was curiosity. And I had thoughts about, gee, I wonder, if the fire department approached the owners of the building to see if they could use it, or if the owners reached out to the fire department to say, hey, let's kill two birds with one stone here, and let's have you, be able to train your people and help us dismantle this set of buildings. And through the entire process, even as I drive by it these days, when it's, partially destroyed and parts of it clearly have been burned and parts of it are falling and other parts are still up, I just have curiosity about it. I don't have the sense that it's upsetting or that it's so terribly ugly. So we're able to use these examples, these lived experiences in our lives to demonstrate to ourselves and each other, if we're willing to learn vicariously from each other or symbiotically from each other, that the events that happen in our lives are neutral unless or until we choose a judgment and or an interpretation of the event and pour our mind energy into it. And it's through that process that we generate the internal physical sensations that we call emotions. There's all kinds of research that's being done around emotions and what creates them and how they're created. And Jill Bolte Taylor, who was a neurologist who had her own stroke and witnessed her own stroke, has written books. And after her first book, related to the stroke, My Stroke of Genius, her next book, which title may come to me, started talking about the research of what we can do to create a better experience using the dynamics of our brain and how thoughts relate to emotions, etc. And in those books and the research she's done, she comments about multiple research experiments that have been done and replicated that indicate that if a human being has a strong emotional response to something based on the interpretations they choose, if they just sit and breathe and allow themselves to feel it fully, that emotion will dissipate in about 90 seconds max, somewhere between a minute and a half. That emotion will dissipate. Now, the fact of the matter is, any one of us could sit and, I use the phrase, bang the gong. We can keep pouring our mind energy into a thought about how bad it is and how wrong it is and how it shouldn't be happening, and we can continue to generate that emotion. But if we just sit, breathe comfortably, turn the focus inside, acknowledge that we are creating this experience, and just allow it to move through us without continuing to pour our mind energy into the thoughts that generate it, then the experience of the emotion will dissipate in about 30 to 60 to 90 seconds max, 90 seconds max. The more we can observe this individually for ourselves, the more we can learn to practice the observation, the early warning sign detection for the upset, whatever, even the smallest upset in me. the more we can be willing to use tools to manage the upsets we create, the better our life experience can become. So, I'm curious about people's comments and reactions to me reading from the book, How Emotions Are Made, The Secret Life of the Brain. Is it making sense? Is it landing well for you? Is it challenging your understanding of how your emotions work? As a point of business or housekeeping, I should mention that there has been a glitch in the Needle app for a couple weeks now, apparently, where people, if they upload the app for the first time or they refresh the app, they're not able to log on, or they're not able to get the one-time passcode to re-up or to log in from the past phone number that they've used or create a new phone number. Apparently, with the actions I've taken in the past day or two, that's been resolved. So if you know somebody who's been trying to use the app and can't get on or can't get a passcode, please encourage them to try again. And if you've had that experience yourself, thanks for being here and listening to this, because that means you tried again on your own anyway, even before I made this announcement. Or perhaps you're listening to this in the archive, and now you'll have access to be able to listen live through the Needle app if this remains fixed. So unless somebody is going to raise a hand, ask a question, comment, give a testimonial, or ask for support in doing a worksheet, I'm going to return to the reading of the book, A Walk in the Physical. So, where I left off reading from Walk in the Physical, if my notes are correct here, the last paragraph I read was, we are always connected to all other reality systems. We don't remember that we are. We don't have the experience of being connected to them because of this veil of forgetfulness that we willingly accept to be able to have an experience as a physical being. But he says we're always connected to all other reality systems, and we never truly leave the higher realms to come to be on earth. Metaphorically, we sleep in heaven to have the dream of earth. Generally speaking, the experience of the higher realms is far more real, lucid, and magnificent than any earthly experience. And if you're like me, whenever you read or hear something like that, your mind kind of gets a little kink in it. It says, how could it be? Because this is the most real. When I'm awake, life feels most real. I occasionally have a dream that feels so real I wake up and think it actually happened. But our experiences are shaped and are limited to what we've agreed to accept as an amnesia, a forgetfulness about our true self and our larger experience in the non-physical realm. Christian goes on here and he writes in a section titled The Prism of the Human Mind. And that's not prison with an M, it's prism, like a light bending formation of glass or water. Christian writes, The physical universe is like a giant mirror provided to give us the opportunity to actually experience our beliefs, experience our perceptions, and experience our assumptions. The contents of the human mind color the entire physical experience. Starting when we are children, the human perspective is formed from living within the experience of duality, parentheses, the individual has little or no memory of his or her larger nature because of this veil of forgetfulness, and thus they may believe that form is everything, or that everything that has any value is what is in form, can be touched, seen, tasted, smelled, heard. He goes on to say, all ideas, objects, and sense data, which are the forms of life, are not fundamental, but while one is human, they are experienced as fundamentally real. The human mind then understands its entire world from the viewpoint of those forms that it bought into over the course of its local experience. So if I go back to the beginning of that first paragraph, it says, the physical universe is like a giant mirror provided to us to give us the opportunity to actually experience our beliefs, our perceptions, and our assumptions. Well, when I read that, I flashed on the book The Mirror Theory, which I've talked about before as a book that came into my life at the perfect time and was so powerful for me. Probably the only other book I've read as often as I've read The Way of Mastery. And then I flashed on how different people on Monday were having different reactions to the content of the internet show. So here's, ostensibly everybody's hearing the same thing. They're hearing the same vibrational energy patterns that we call words transmitted through these electronic devices coming into their physical realm, wherever they're located on the planet. And we operate from a perspective that assumes everybody's hearing the same thing. And yet, very clearly, not everybody was experiencing the same thing. Some people experienced curiosity. Some people experienced sympathy and compassion. Some people experienced rage and indignation. And each of them were probably thinking that they were experiencing it because of what they were hearing, because of the vibrations of the words that were coming through whatever electronic device they were using to connect with the internet show. So the physical universe is this mirror provided to us to give us an opportunity to experience what we're creating when we hold on to beliefs, when we create perceptions, when we hold on to assumptions. And what we're not taught as well is that what it is that we hold in our minds, whatever that is, positive, negative, neutral, literally colors our entire physical experience. He goes on and he writes, but all interpretation is chosen. Consciousness places the meaning upon form. So this is another way to say all events are neutral until consciousness labels it and gives it a meaning. The forms of our physical universe are neutral and do not possess inherent charge or meaning. Yet as beliefs are established, those beliefs become assumptions that appear to be fundamental characteristics of reality itself. Our deepest beliefs become invisible to us. We then experience reality as exactly what it is like to be one of those who has those beliefs, even if those beliefs are not consciously visible. Now, my mind instantly takes me back to the reading I was doing yesterday, because Lisa Feldman Barrett is talking about the classical view, theory of emotions that says emotions are just universal and automatic and pre-programmed in the system and registered in certain parts of the brain. And Aristotle thought that, and Freud thought that, and Buddha thought that, and it's a common fundamental belief or assumption package that has been pervasively accepted by researchers, by everyday people, by authors, etc. And yet, as a researcher, when Lisa Feldman Barrett tries to replicate experiments that supposedly demonstrated the classical model of emotions as being pre-programmed, and they have a unique fingerprint for each different emotion that can be registered in heart rate and facial temperature and flushing of facial skin and respiration, etc., etc. The more they research it, the more she tries to replicate experiments that have been done, the more she can't do it. And for a while she thought, hey, there's something wrong with me. I'm a lousy researcher. But then she kept working at it, and she realized, wait a minute, it's not that I'm a lousy researcher, it's that these experiments don't replicate. They don't mean what people thought they meant, and in different situations, different people running the experiment, different people being subjects in the experiment, they get different results, which means what we used to believe was the way emotions work and arise within the human is not accurate. And so researchers like Lisa Feldman Barrett started to dig in and try to explain and explore and understand what's the actual process that each of us goes through in various ways to create the emotions that we experience. Well, that's what we're talking about. That's what Michael Rice talks about in his lectures. That's what the Way of Mastery tries to get us to understand when it says all events are neutral. And every time you choose a thought and pour your mind energy into it as though it's true, it's like throwing a pebble into the still clear pool of your mind, and it causes ripples, and it goes out and bounces off the external reality or actuality, and it ripples back to you. And so as you choose your thoughts and treat them as though they're honest, they're true, they're valuable, you create this cascade of changes within your brain and body that causes what you experience as an emotion. And the more we can learn about that, the more we can understand that each of us individually is creating our experience of life, and each of us individually is creating every understanding we have about right and wrong, good or bad, etc. The better we're able to manage those energies and those belief systems and that focus of our conscious mental energy that we call mind energy, and create a life we would prefer. So Christian goes on and writes, the physical universe is not strictly objective as it appears, but rather the physical universe responds to and changes as the result of the intent and beliefs of the individual and the collective in accordance with a rule set for our reality. He writes, belief is not only a powerful lens that deeply colors the way we see it, it also affects how physical reality actualizes itself to us. Dr. Michael Rice talks about this in various lectures. We've got videos you can watch on YouTube from Anil Seth. First name is Anil, A-N-I-L, last name Seth, S-E-T-H. all about how each of us is hallucinating the realities that we experience. And when we are hallucinating in coordination with other people and we agree on the hallucinations, we call it reality. Belief is not only a powerful lens that deeply colors the way we see reality, belief also affects how physical reality actualizes itself to us. Another experience of that we were talking about the other day, it's the double slit experiment in quantum physics that demonstrates that your mind energy, as you focus it in the world, has an impact, a creative impact on the world. And it literally changes the way the world shows up for you. Michael Rice has a lecture he titles A Course in Miracles, A New Beginning. And from the New Beginning lesson in the Course in Miracles, the Course in Miracles talks about how the recommendation is that you get up in the morning and you decide what kind of day you'd like to have. And let's say that you get up and you decide you would like to have a productive, loving, joyful, respectful day. And that lesson says, then get up and start giving away respect and joy and productivity. And as you give that, watch what happens. The next recommendation is that you make the determination for yourself that day that you're not going to make any decisions on your own. You're going to ask your higher guidance or Holy Spirit or God or light or love, it doesn't matter. Something other than your conscious logical mind to guide you in every decision you make. And then it says, go on out and start living your day by giving away the kind of day that you would like to have. And as that happens, invariably, life is going to have its own little ripples, and you're going to be interacting with other people. And when you notice that you don't like what's unfolding, realize in that moment, at the earliest warning sign, that you become aware that you don't like what's unfolding in your life, there's a resistance, there's a tightness, there's a tension in you. It may not have gone all the way to a negative emotional state, but as soon as you recognize that, make the realization that you have already decided something on your own. And cancel what you've decided and ask Holy Spirit to show you another way to look at this. That section of the Course in Miracles says we understand that people don't like to admit they have made an error or that they are wrong. So we're not going to ask you to say you're wrong. We will just ask you to evaluate whether or not you like how it feels when you're angry or sad or scared or hurt. And at least, maybe you can at least say, I don't like how this feels. And then the next step would be to say, I hope there's another way to look at this situation that will result in a different experience for me. This comes right in line with what Christian Sundberg is talking about from the book A Walk in the Physical, where it says that your belief is not just a lens that deeply colors the way you see reality, it also affects how reality actualizes itself in front of you. Christian goes on and says, fear and ignorance are the only obstacles to a much more fully actualized life where we truly exist as loving natures here on earth. Again, fear and ignorance are the only obstacles to a much more fully actualized life, actualizing our experience as our true natures, loving nature here on earth. He writes, regardless of the limited interpretation we are experiencing, and boy, brace yourself, keep your breath moving as you hear this next line, all is always well. In and through the foundation of being, consciousness, capital B, being, from which everything arises. Now, breathe and soften, because as you think about people are getting blown up on different continents in different countries, and financial hardship, and people who are homeless, and et cetera, et cetera. If you're focusing on all those things at a purely physical level, and you hear somebody say, all is well, all is always well, everything works out beautifully, you think this person's an idiot. Because at the physical level of scale, clearly not everything is well. When we have people who don't have enough food to eat healthy food, they don't have enough money to buy healthy food on a regular basis. We don't have peace around the globe. We've still got carjackings. We've still got gang shootings. We've still got one country blowing up another country in an invasion. So when you hear a phrase like, all is always well, in and through the foundation of being from which reality arises, you might easily generate upset, tightness, tension, rejecting the premise. Please understand that people like Christian Sundberg and the great spiritual teachers, they understand that things exist on different levels of scale. And none of the true teachers would tell you, you don't really have a body and you're not really feeling pain, etc. They would be telling you there's more to your life than just that. And how you choose to interpret and respond to this experience of having a body that's in pain, or seeing your neighbors struggle because their house burned down, or seeing something on the news about war going on in the Ukraine or on the Gaza Strip, etc., that what's going on is real. What you experience as you look at those data points and choose an interpretation from them and choose a response to them, that's within your dominion. You can choose to change that. You can understand that your conscious logical mind won't ever grasp what is the nature of a black hole. How big is our galaxy? Much less how could there be billions of galaxies? So, regardless of the limited interpretation we are experiencing, all is always well in and through the foundation of being from which it arises. The physical experience does not need to be one of somber seriousness, but it can be one of joy. There's another statement that, as you hear it, I encourage you to stay tuned into what you're feeling physically, mentally, and emotionally, because this probably, for most people, will generate thoughts that, if they pour enough mind energy into them, can generate negative emotional states. Now, when he says, regardless of the limited interpretation we're experiencing, all is always well, he gives two different short essays. The first one is titled, All is Well. And it reads, if all is not well in your experience, it's because you have interpreted that all is not well. Your evidence for all not being well may seem obvious to you. After all, it may appear clear to you that things in your life and your world are not well. You may even feel disdain for those who don't see that things are obviously not so well. How can anyone say all is well? Christian writes, in fact, consciousness places the interpretation and meaning. We come into the physical to experience the constraints of physical life, including the constraint of ignorance, which gives us the opportunity to interpret our experience from a very unique point of view. In response to our sense data, we buy into earthly interpretations, perceptions, and beliefs. And then we have the resultant experiences that our interpretations, perceptions, and beliefs yield to us. That process of actually living through and working with our local interpretations, perceptions, and beliefs is what adds to creation, capital C, creation. And that is what is so meaningful to our soul. The fundamental level beyond all the interpretations, beyond the perceptions, beliefs, the consciousness that exists cannot be harmed. As I say, it can't be chipped, dented, rusted, faded, or broken in any way. And it's capable of nearly infinite creation. Its ability to have the experience of limitation is simply a part of its creative power. The brave soul jumps in to experience the apparent darkness and helps all that is grow in its experience by providing profoundly valuable perspective. You, right now, you are participating in that incredibly meaningful activity right now. Beneath all the desires and drives, beneath the sickness and the health, the sights and sounds, birth and death, the ineffable beingness still exists. From that fundamental state, it is totally and completely apparent that all is well and always will be. That statement of, quote, all is well, that all is wellness, transcends and gives rise to everything else within it, including this temporary illusion of separation. If you cannot sense that right now from your current state of awareness, please don't worry. That's just part of this play that we're doing here on Earth. Allow yourself, at least intellectually, to consider that the pains and destruction that appear so unrelenting exist within something greater, something far more enduring. When you fearlessly listen quietly within, deep within all your own interpretations, perceptions, and beliefs, you will find that the truth is always alive within you as well. Something about that reading gives me the thought to a person I had in a session yesterday. He's 38 years old. He's got 7-year-old twin sons. He's got life experiences from, relatively blessed to abusive. I mean, he's been all over the map, as most of us have by the time we hit our mid-30s. And we were talking about something related to all the pain and struggles that he's had in his life, and there's been a considerable amount of it. And something brought us to this idea of our experience of time. And so I asked him to try to remember what the passage of time was like for him when he was his son's age or younger, and how long the summer seemed to last. And he was quick to say forever. It was a lifetime. It was just like, I'm so glad to be out of school. I'll never have to go to school again. And then I asked him to think about where and when he started to notice that the experience of time shifted to be much more rapid. For me, it was around the time of moving from the 8th grade into 9th grade. I'm not sure exactly where it was, but one of those summers evaporated right in front of my eyes. And I thought, wait, I'm not ready to go back to school. I hate school. I didn't even get to do X, Y, and Z this summer. But it was the same actual length of time, but my perception of it had dramatically shifted. And then we started talking about Okay, so by the time you reach 20 and 30 years old, have you noticed that time itself seems to be speeding up? He said, "Oh yeah, absolutely. It's just amazing. It's ridiculous." And so then I went into the next level and I said, "So just imagine, what if these people that we know that are in their 80s and their 90s and they tell us that, life just keeps going faster and faster. Sometimes the days seem to go forever and the years flip by, like just literally turning the calendar page. What if after we drop the body, if there is anything left, if there is consciousness, if there is a soul, what if that experience of time shifts another quantum level and everything you experienced in your 90 or 100-year physical experience of life seems less than the blink of an eye to that higher consciousness, or to that same consciousness once it's dropped the body?" And that thought experiment was quite useful. So, as I struggle, as I suffer, one of the best things I can keep in mind is this too shall pass, and that the experience need not be something I use to generate tremendous upset and more suffering. Taking a pause here and checking comments, even though there doesn't seem to be a notification of one. Doug asks, "What chapter or page are you on?" I'm reading from the book A Walk in the Physical on a Kindle, page 28 of 352. And I had just jumped ahead to the essay labeled 012 to read about the joy. Making an attempt to turn on the microphone for Doug. Are you there? Don? Hello, Don?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not using my headset this time, so just regular speakerphone. You may have actually addressed, or, well, Christian maybe addressed or answered the question comment I had when I first went in the queue, between then and now when we're talking. But there's only maybe I should call into Michael sometime. There's only a couple things that I disagree that I've ever heard come out of Michael's mouth, but I'm willing to accept that I may not fully understand it. So to go back to my previous call the other day briefly, so there's been 1,000 more Palestinians killed since Israel broke the ceasefire. There was 50.
Let me just stop you there, because this is not a show about
Right. Okay. So
current events.
I won't even mention that. But here's the thing that I have trouble with that Michael says. So let's say 20,000 kids have been killed over there since the beginning. According to what my understanding of Michael says, there's something in those children or in their bloodline that's bringing that upon them. And I understand the neutrality, and I understand I have certain beliefs, and you just addressed earlier where those beliefs come from. So it's a sort of slippery slope. I have to be careful about my beliefs and judgments, opinions. Right? They're all coming out of this physical sense, which is not really the greater reality, I guess, is the way to put it. So can you address that about people that die innocently, children, right? We never think of anyone more innocent than children.
Okay, so let me just address this before you keep going, because you want me to address it. I can't really address it in any way that makes any sense for anybody else. But the way I make sense of it is this, that this concept we have of fairness is just a concept. And each of us can create our own belief about what's fair and what's good and what's bad and what's right and what's wrong. But we're just creating that. We're making it up, right? So if you have somebody who watches a nature special, National Geographic special about the lions on the Serengeti, and they chase down one of these prairie deer or whatever they have over there, or they chase down a warthog, and they feel horrible for the poor little deer or the warthog. I'm just creating an interpretation that it's bad or wrong for the lion to kill another animal. Right? The other thing that popped into my head was this idea that I forget where I heard it, but somebody said, isn't it horrible that this thing happened over here at this something local in their life? And their brother or sister, an older brother or sister, said to them, isn't it amazing? There were, they had some statistic in front of them about the number of people that died in China in the last week. And the older sibling said to the younger sibling, isn't it amazing that you didn't generate any upset about that? So I don't know the absolute truth of this, and there's no way that I would ever say these children brought this on themselves. And that's one of the pitfalls, that when people start talking about, here's how the world really works, as though they actually know. And that never really resonated well with me. What resonates well with me is there's so much more going on here that we don't know and understand. And one of the most productive exercises that I've ever been exposed to is the one that comes from the Way of Mastery, where it says, please wake up and realize. Use this exercise to understand how little you actually know about the world around you. Pick up an object and get honest with yourself about how you don't know where this thing came from. You don't know where the materials that went into it came from. Here's an apple sitting on my desk. I have no idea where this thing was grown. I don't know if it's a hybrid. I don't know the first time that a human being decided to try and eat an apple. I don't know, what it might have been sprayed with, or et cetera, et cetera. So if I practice this awareness of the breadth and depth of my ignorance, I open myself to this expansive learning state that happens in my brain that our researchers have been able to track. And I leave myself in a position where I can learn. And I can learn expansively. But when I say, wait a minute, what that person is saying is wrong, or this is how it really works, and I feel any kind of tightness or tension within me, I could choose to use that as the alarm system that's saying, oh, I'm not in the flow of life right now. I'm not participating in a joyful, compassionate, respectful way in this moment, either to myself or to the outside circumstance. One of the things that, this kind of thing comes up on a regular basis. Don, I've been handling questions like this for decades now in my practice, and people say things like, well, so what do you say about the 5-year-old that gets cancer? I say, I don't say anything about it other than our life isn't fair. And I don't know why one child would get cancer when another one wouldn't. And I don't know why, somebody's born with malformed hand or foot. That's all I can say to that is I have no idea why or how that happens. And my experience of listening to people who want to tell me in some kind of a formulaic way how or why that happens, my experience is those are not the most comfortable, relaxed, loving people I've ever encountered. They're usually driven in some kind of a judgment-based formulation to be tight and tense and want to shout down anybody that refutes what they're saying, rather than just say, oh, well, that's an interesting perspective. I wonder which is actually true. So, so let me just start with that and ask what your thoughts are. Is there something you want me to try to say beyond that?
No, I mean, so I'm just trying to reconcile some, the teachings from you and Michael, and some beliefs, which, like I said before, are kind of dangerous, that I've held and still hold on to a certain extent. So in a somewhat there's three quotes that come to mind and things that I have embraced or believe in. And like one was Martin Luther King, something along the lines of, evil flourishes when good men stand by and do nothing. Another one, I think, again, I'm paraphrasing because I don't know the exact quote, Stokely Carmichael, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. I think this is Marcus Garvey and maybe somebody else. Power has never conceded anything without a struggle, and it never will. So on a somewhat related topic, and I embrace the flow of life idea, and I don't suppose to know the reasons why these things are happening, but I'm observing them, and I have problem, like I know some other people do that listen, not feeling like I'm doing something constructive. So every day we see this country march farther and farther in totalitarianism,
Okay,
which is
now that's a judgment. That's a judgment you
it,
have, right?
it,
Now, let me interrupt because we're going to run out of time. I want to address what you've already brought up. David E. Martin, brilliant guy, and I certainly don't agree with everything he writes and says either. But in his book, Lizards Eat Butterflies, he talks about a story where he's in a foreign country where there's tremendous wealth and great poverty all in the same block as he's driving around. And he gets picked up from the airport by somebody in a limousine that's carrying him and they're driving by this abject poverty, perhaps the worst he's ever seen. And he turns to his fellow uh, companion in the limo and says, this is all wrong. This can't be right. This is not just. The life is horrible. The Creator couldn't want this to be. And his friend says to him, well, consider the perspective that everything's perfect just as it is. And a part of that is us being in this limo and you recognizing the pain and suffering of these other humans and you having some wherewithal to affect change for the better, either in these specific people's lives or in a general pattern. So what if you use the very same data points and rearrange them so that your interpretation is, like Byron Katie would say, everything that's already happened is just perfect. How can I know that? Because it's already happened. Now, if I'm in the middle of an interaction with somebody and it strikes me that I might do something that adds more loving, blessing, positive outcome type energy to this situation, please feel free to add that energy in that moment. And you might want to pay attention to, as you sit wherever you are on the planet, you are generating and sending out into this quantum field whatever quality of mental emotional energy you choose. And you might want to consider, are you doing anybody any good by generating anger or fear or shut down overwhelm as you hear news stories or as you read about what's going on in another country that's beyond anything you have a direct ability to impact? And in the same moment, you might want to take a breath and say, okay, so what with the life energy I have, with the money I have, with the time, intelligence, money, and energy that is under my direction, what might I do to try and spread something more helpful, more loving, more productive, more compassionate in this next moment? That's the best I've got for you.
Yeah, I'm trying to bridge those two things. It's just not easy. So quickly, because I know we're running out of time, as a little PSA related to the country, there's a nationwide, I don't want to call it protest because that's not the right word, but there's a nationwide action this Saturday. If people just Google Vote Save America PAC or Hands Off, Vote Save America PAC, I'm sure the local information will come up.
All right. Thank you so much for the call. I realize we're out of time, and I will remind us all that Michael and Jeannie should start up another show in just a minute or two. And I'll remind us that we come from love. We're made of stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. There will be a support group tonight from 6:30 to 9 Central. All the information on joining us for free is available at mindshiftersacademy.org. Blessings.